it up right now. Let's listen in, and we'll get analysis as soon as he's done. Here he is, the special counsel, Jack Smith.
Good evening. Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with conspiring to defraud the United States, conspiring to disenfranchise voters, and conspiring and attempting to obstruct an official proceeding. The indictment was issued by a grand jury of citizens here in the District of Columbia, and it sets forth the crimes charged in detail. I encourage everyone to read it in full. The attack on our nation's capital on January 6, 2021, was an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. As described in the indictment, it was fueled by lies. Lies by the defendant targeted at obstructing a bedrock function of the U.S. government, the nation's process of collecting, counting, and certifying the results of the presidential election. The men and women of law enforcement who defended the U.S. Capitol on January 6th are heroes. They are patriots, and they are the very best of us. They did not just defend a building or the people sheltering in it. They put their lives on the line to defend who we are as a country and as a people. They defended the very institutions and principles that define the United States. Since the attack on our Capitol, the Department of Justice has remained committed to ensuring accountability for those criminally responsible for what happened that day. This case is brought consistent with that commitment, and our investigation of other individuals continues. In this case, my office will seek a speedy trial so that our evidence can be tested in court and judged by a jury of citizens. In the meantime, I must emphasize that the indictment is only an allegation and that the defendant must be presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. I would like to thank the members of the Federal Bureau of Investigation who are working on this investigation with my office, as well as the many career prosecutors and law enforcement agents from around the country who have worked on previous January 6th investigations. These women and men are public servants of the very highest order, and it is a privilege to work alongside them. Thank you.
Why didn't you charge any of the other co-conspirators?
A short but very powerful statement from the special counsel, Jack Smith. Evan Perez, you've been covering this story from the very, very beginning. Let me get your analysis of what we just heard.
Well, Wolf, we expected that the special counsel was going to be a man of very few words, and that's what you heard there. One of the things that he did there is he connected what the former president was doing, what he perpetrated by spreading lies about alleged fraud when he knew, according to prosecutors, when he knew that there was no fraud, there was no evidence to support his claims of fraud. What he has done in this indictment is tied the violence that we saw on January 6th, of course, the very vivid pictures that we've seen of police officers defending the Capitol, defending the lives of members of Congress as they were trying to fulfill their ceremonial function of certifying the vote, tying all of those acts there on January 6th with the former president's overall scheme to try to remain in power. They describe in this indictment, Wolf, that during the time of the violence, the former president was still trying to press members of Congress to essentially try to somehow put off the vote, trying to make sure that even if Vice President Pence was not agreeing to his scheme, that members of Congress perhaps could find a way to buy him more time, and again, find a way for him to remain in power. And so that's what you see in this 45-page document, and you heard there from the special counsel trying to make sure people understood that this was not just about politics. It's not about, they acknowledged that the former president had the right to challenge the vote. He has a right to lie about fraud and everything. What he does not have a right to do, according to prosecutors, is to carry out these three conspiracies as a way to try to remain in power. That's what they say. Those are the crimes that the former president committed here, Wolf.
Yeah, very specific crimes and very detailed information. We heard Jack Smith, Shan Wu, say this was an unprecedented assault on the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. It was fueled by lies, including lies by the defendant, referring to the former president of the United States.
Yeah, I think it's so critical. If you want to look at only one paragraph in this indictment, it's the first one. It says Donald Trump was the 45th president of the United States and a candidate for re-election in 2020. The defendant lost the 2020 presidential election. Right. Heart of the indictment, heart of the issue to the American people, makes no bones about it. He lost, and these are the things he tried to do to cheat after losing. And that's really the heart of the whole issue here. And Smith, obviously not saying a whole lot of details, but the indictment speaks for itself. It's a very sweeping indictment in terms of how it marshals all the facts. As Norm was referencing, the earlier prosecution model has been followed to a T. That memorandum, it takes care of the Justice Department efforts, trying to corrupt the Justice Department, how Trump tried to influence the state elections, and also how he tried to capitalize on the violence at the Capitol, and including the threats against Pence. Notably, it doesn't really make a lot of hay with his actual remarks at the Capitol, avoiding the sort of issue on First Amendment speech of, march on the Capitol. It avoids that. It really centers, as Evan was pointing out, on his attempts to illegally overturn the legal results of the election.
And it does tell the story, as Norm was saying, in sort of very simple ways, because he tried everything, tried to get his Justice Department, to change its mind, and tried to get someone else installed to run the Justice Department as a result of that. And then there's a paragraph here which says that then the plan capitalized on ideas presented in a memoranda which evolved over time from a legal strategy to preserve the defendant's rights to a corrupt plan to subvert the federal government function by stopping Biden's electors' votes from being counted. So it started out as one kind of plan where he's making phone calls, he's calling Brad Raffensperger, he's saying, you've got those votes hidden somewhere, you got to do this. And then when that failed, the last-ditch attempt, as he points out here, was to create, this fake elector theory, which, of course, was fake, and goes through it, and goes through the desperation, I think, of what was going on in his mind.
And Jack Smith basically said that the defendant, Trump, was criminally responsible for what happened on January 6th. Very strong words indeed. You want to react?
Well, if I just want to say, I don't think we should ignore when the indictment came down, the first text I got from a justice source was, the investigation is not over. The special counsel made that very clear. Again, the level of detail in this, when you go to page 7, where it outlines all of the people who told Trump that he had lost the election, it's not one person, it's not two persons. There are 8 listed here, from the vice president to the attorney general to the director of national intelligence, the Department of Homeland Security. It just speaks to exactly what we were really told about this indictment was it was going to underscore over and over. Finally, there's one thing here I think may be new toward the end on page 33. It mentions here, it's talking about Mike Pence, and it says, former vice president, on December 29th, as reflected in the vice president's contemporaneous notes, the defendant, Donald Trump, told the vice president that the Justice Department was finding major infractions. So the details of that are interesting, but all of a sudden, I don't think we've known before that Pence had contemporaneous notes. So what else?
We knew that Pence was upset that the president had lied about what he had said. We knew that, but the notes, I agree with you, the fact that he had taken notes or dictated notes is something I'm sure that Jack Smith found very useful.
Yeah.